What's up, everybody? It's Make It Make Sense. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. We got the book, and I'm super excited to bring it to you guys. We are the only people on the internet who got it, other than the few of you guys who actually do own it from 2004. So let's get started. Couple announcements. I told you guys that I was going to be doing something for a family. I have found a family. It's a single mother of 4. We definitely, as the straight shooters, I would like for us to help this family. So I'll let you guys know a little bit more. I'm working on some things behind the scenes that only I can assist them with. But I'll be letting you guys know, for anybody who might want to help out for Christmas or whatever, I'll be letting you guys know that in the videos, what we can do. I will meet with this. She's a straight shooter. She's a single mother of 4. And she needs our help. So I'll definitely let you guys know. But like the videos, the intro plays, we got a lot to get into.
Make it make sense. Could somebody please make it make sense?
Person I follow, what is it called? Make It Make Sense. There's a little guy, Make It Make Sense.
Are you being nice tonight?
Great media outlet, make that make sense. Okay. Shout out to Mr. Make It Make Sense.
Make it make sense. You knew what was up.
Big Mims. Surfer. Make it make sense. Tell me how you squeeze it. Make it make sense. Tell me about the things that you see. Make it make sense. Tell me about the things of your dreams. Hey, let me work out all the things in between. Make it make sense. Tell me how you squeeze it. Make it make sense. Tell me about the things that you see. Make it make sense. Tell me about the things of your dreams. Hey, let me work out all the things in between. Make it make sense.
I love you, Rihanna.
I don't know you was love me. You don't love nobody. You love your own self. Somebody love you. And sorry. You don't tell nobody you sorry.
Okay, guys. So as you can see, I've been trying to get in the Christmas spirit. I don't know how well it worked, but we got a black Santa Claus, so I'm here for it. Anyway, so we're gonna read this whole thing. So Cinderella remixed, an uninhibited, unputdownable novel about a small town girl and the music mogul determined to turn her into a megastar. When 21-year-old Mimi travels from a small town in Ohio to New York for an audition with Lamont Jackson, head of the hottest hip-hop label in the business, she has no idea that her life is about to change overnight. The moment Lamont hears the beautiful young singer's silky voice, he signs her up in a bid to find mainstream success beyond the hip-hop charts. Soon, Mimi is rocking the chicest designer clothes, hanging with an A-list crowd, and being escorted through velvet ropes into the city's most exclusive clubs. But everything comes with a price. As Lamont's new female star, Mimi is given the full makeover treatment. Fading supermodel Vanessa de la Cruz. Is that Kimura? Fading supermodel Vanessa de la Cruz restyles Bohemian Mimi into a ghetto fab glamour girl. Wasn't her stuff called Fabulosity? Correct me if I'm wrong. Into a ghetto fab glamour girl with outrageous shopping sprees at Prada and Gucci. Lena Whitaker, the hip-hop obsessed daughter of a powerful attorney, is handpicked by Lamont to become her club-hopping sidekick. And Mimi can't quite tell if her spotlight-craving record producer, Gerald Country D. McHenry, is a friend or foe. As Mimi is seduced by the clothes, money, and decadent lifestyle of her new crowd, she comes to see that Lamont's own future in the recording industry rests on her inexperienced shoulders. Cinderella never felt pressure like this. Now, guys, you know, I have like a real job. I might have to create another channel for book clubs because I don't know if this is going to stay on my main channel, but I'll definitely let you guys know where I stand with this. We're going to do the book, but I might have to create another channel for this. Here we go. Intro. Lamont sauntered into the grill room like he owned the place. Mr. Jackson, the maitre d', greeted him warmly. Mr. Green is waiting at your usual table. Lamont gifted him with a courteous half smile. Their usual table was the best one in Midtown Manhattan restaurant where the power players converged. A dark-skinned man with an imposing build and a cocksure swagger, Lamont Jackson was not conventionally handsome. Are we talking about Diddy? Okay, so Dina says it's about Russell, not Diddy. The thing is, Russell wrote the foreword to this book. So we'll see. But not conventionally handsome. Would that apply to Diddy and Russell? Y'all let me know. He cut a formidable swath as he strode through the room in his favorite Briatoni suit, chin up, acknowledging fellow members of media elite with friendly nods. The masculine scent of his Bulgari cologne lingered in his wake. He derived a soul-deep satisfaction from being watched, being known. He felt their eyes upon him as he approached Irv Green, the 66-year-old chairman of Augusta Music, who had been ranked number 10 on last year's Entertainment Weekly Power 100. Is that Jimmy Irving? Okay. Irvine. After his own record label had achieved its best year to date, Lamont had landed in the magazine's annual honorable mention spot at 100.5. An insult. He would have preferred not have been mentioned at all. Lamont consulted his Petit Philippe as he slid into the booth. Am I late? Irv Green was a stickler for punctuality. It was something he and Lamont had in common. No, Irv said cordially, not bothering to get up. Right on time. They enjoyed a warm professional relationship. There was no need for formality, though if Lamont had arrived first, he would have instinctively stood to greet the music industry legend. They ordered lunch and made small talk until Irv finally addressed the unspoken topic hanging in the air. So it's true, he announced between bites of salmon. Really? Lamont attempted to sound surprised, even though rumors had been swirling for a month. They want you out. Yeah, Irv said. The effers. He leaned over and in a confidential whisper said, so everyone knows already, huh? Well, not everyone. What are people saying? Listen, Lamont said. HMG can't ask you to step down. They have no cause. None, Irv agreed immediately. It's a forced retirement. He was reconciled to the fact that he was being pushed out as the head of Augusta, where he had been cranking out hits for more than 30 years. What bull? Lamont spat, truly outraged. Even at 38 years old, as the CEO of Triple Large Entertainment, the hip-hop label he'd founded in a joint venture with Augusta, Lamont was feeling the heat from younger moguls in training. Bull, it is, Irv said. But we operate in a world that worships the young and exiles the old. He shrugged. He'd been wrestling with the dilemma for a month and had let go of the anger. Technically, Lamont had to report to Irv, but mostly he was the master of his own ship. Irv wasn't going to tell Lamont, an African-American who had the pulse of urban culture, how to run a hip-hop label. Irv had been one of Lamont's most vocal supporters to the higher-ups at HMG, the German conglomerate that owned Augusta. Now, that's why I think it's about Diddy. A German conglomerate owns Bad Boy. And yes, I do think this is about Clive. But now somebody can tell me, is Fat Farm also owned by that German conglomerate? Let me know. I don't think it's Andre Harrell, because Andre Harrell was actually part of a music group in the 80s. He hadn't founded Uptown until maybe the late 80s, I want to say. So that would not put him in the 90s as somebody who'd been running a ship for 30 years. Maybe she mixed in stuff about Russell and Diddy. Okay. You remember the first time we had lunch here, Lamont reflected, 9 years ago when we were working out the joint venture. I remember it like it was yesterday, Irv said. You had on jeans that were too baggy, Air Jordans, a yellow hooded Morehouse sweatshirt, and Morehouse sweatshirt, and you kept taking calls on a cell phone that was the size of a brick. I was embarrassed to be seen with you. Lamont didn't want to be reminded of that. But remember what you said to me that day. People were just starting to realize hip-hop wasn't a passing fad. I said the Germans at HMG were racist, and the only reason they wanted to get in bed with me was because green was the only color that could blind them to my own. Irv nodded, and I said, I'm a Jew from Canarsie. You think they like me better? To them, we're both the N-word. Accept it and move on. They both chuckled at the recollection. It was the best advice I'd ever gotten, Lamont said. Still is. He learned so much from Irv, how to handle corporate politics, how to groom and break-in artists, even how to dress. Lamont looked at Irv now, casually attired in a white shirt, no tie, what was left of his dark brown hair elegantly slicked back. The shirt was so crisp, so sturdy, so blindingly white, it almost had a celestial glow. Where did you even buy a shirt like that, and how much did it cost? You also said, Lamont continued to trip down memory lane to massage Irv's ego, you make hit records. We all make money and everyone's happy. A thoughtful pause. You've been producing hits for 35 years, Irv. You've made them a lot of money. You're still at the top of your game. It's not right what they're trying to do. That's what everyone's saying. We got like almost 700 in the chat. Definitely hit the like button. It's a free way to support the channel. So what's next? Lamont asked casually, self-serving to the bone. He was more curious about what this shakeup meant for him than his mentor. Golf's not my thing, Irv said. Might start my own label. I can write my own ticket. A differential, of course. And they're still deciding on my replacement. The pause was so pregnant, it was expecting triplets. I like this writer. She definitely, I like the way that she writes. Say it, Lamont silently urged. Say it. Irv Green looked across the table and smiled genially. If it were up to me, the job would be yours today, but I do know you're at the top of their list. Lamont learned of his considerable girth back on the... Y'all, I really do like this. I got so accustomed to like reading books like Portia's books, where it's like A plus B equals C. Every 8th page you can color on the diagram. That this lady and the way that she's so like efficient, she efficiently puts you into the place that she's at, and she does it. I like her. I like her so far. Lamont leaned his considerable girth back on the leather banquet and pushed his plate of risotto away, taking a moment to compose himself so his deep baritone would not sound too eager in reply. He felt like jumping up in the packed dining room and shouting, I'm ready, but he only shifted slightly, and when he spoke, he sounded cool and calm. You know, I've been thinking of branching out, he said, doing some R&B shit. I have some things in the works right now. Wonderful, Irv enthused. That's what you need to do. Show the German people who tried to take over the world in World War II, you're not one-trick pony. Irv wiped his mouth with the wiped his mouth with the cloth napkins. There's still a lot of work. There is still a lot to be worked out before I leave. Everyone's going to be watching you, Monty. Show them what you can do. As soon as Lamont hopped into the back of his Mercedes Maybach, he called Daryl McHenry, his all-purpose whipping boy. They'd already spoken about the brilliant idea that had come to Lamont last night. Daryl was just waiting for the word. Lamont had 3 for them. Call the girl. I'm liking this. Yes, and somebody said that she passed away. Yes, and her cause of death is technically still unknown. Chapter 1. Excuse me, miss. Because we ain't nobody, LaToya said. Lakeisha turned from peering out the window of the Chester Hotel, annoyed because her question, why they got us staying in this bum-ass hotel, had been a rhetorical one. There was no view, just another hotel across 37th Street, and from what little she could see, the rooms over there were nicer. I know, Keisha said, but still, we didn't even get a limo from the airport. We didn't need a limo, Mimi said, busily straightening up. They sent a car and it was fine. Why are you cleaning up Kenny's room? Keisha said, stretching out on the perfectly made bed. Because I already finished with ours, Mimi said. I just can't sit around doing nothing, waiting for the phone to ring. It's driving me crazy. They were sharing the adjoining room, but they were camped out here because their manager, Kenny Hill, would get the call at the hotel since his cell phone service had been interrupted for non-payment. And they wanted to be there when he did. Let's eat, Keisha said. That'll give us something to do. She picked up the room service menu. We can order food, right? Frowned over at Toya. They pay for that. Last night after their audition at the triple large offices, they had gone to Planet Hollywood for dinner, hoping to spot some celebrities, unaware that it was a tourist trap populated by autograph seekers like themselves where no celebrity would ever be caught dead. I don't know, Toya said wearily. And that's true. Planet Hollywood and that model thing that came around in, I think, like the late 90s, early 2000s, where Naomi and them models were coming in. saying this is what we eat. These are the burgers we eat, knowing damn well they don't eat none of that. Planet Hollywood was for the Arnold Schwarzeneggers. Never. They would go for the opening and that was it. So this is very true. It's like going to the Ivy in LA. I don't know, Toya said weirdly. Keisha was always looking for a free meal, literally and figuratively. And it got under Toya's skin that she was so simple-minded. Are we talking about Portia? You need to ask Kenny. Where is he at? Keisha said. She swirled one of her long micro braids. It don't take that long to buy a pack of Newports. Mimi didn't care about the low-budget accommodations or that there had been no limo yesterday. Keisha thought this whole trip was going to be like an episode of Making the Band. She was obsessed with that show. Kenny did nothing to dissuade her from thinking it was going to be limos, parties, and Cristal bottles popping. But why on earth would anyone do that for them? They were nobodies, but they had come here to change that. They'd all met at Performing Arts School of Toledo. They joked that they were like TLC, whose Crazy Sexy Cool album was one of their all-time favorites. Keisha, big-boned and equipped with a razor-sharp tongue, was the crazy component. Toya, a round-faced girl with a heartwarming smile and a degree of self-assurance that bellied her years, was the cool. And Mimi, well, she wasn't wild like Keisha, and she didn't possess Toya's innate confidence. So sometimes she felt she got the sexy slot by default. So I'm thinking that Toya, I don't know who Toya is supposed to be. A round-faced girl. I'm sorry, Toya, a round-faced girl with a heartwarming smile. Is that Kimora? Because Kimora does have a round face. I'm thinking Keisha is Kim Porter. She got the sexy slot by default. No doubt, Mimi was pretty. Since she was a baby, everyone had remarked on it. But her usual baggy gear, sexy she was not. Tight jeans and a midriff-bearing tops invited attention, and as a biracial girl in a predominantly black school, she already stood out enough. Okay, so now I'm thinking, well, Mimi must be Kimora, biracial, going to a black school. She already stood out enough. All she ever wanted to do was blend in. Her mother, Angela, was Italian, and Mimi couldn't remember her Haitian father. Jacques Bertrand had ran out on Angela a year after their only child was born, and the annual birthday cards that had arrived late with no return address stopped arriving after Mimi's 8th birthday. She kept the details of her home life to herself as she did most things, managing to pull straight as while dodging the taunts of white girl and high yellow heifer, as if she thought she was better than the other girls. Just like many of them, she was raised by an overworked single mother. She rode the bus to school from the bad side of town, and the clothes over which they ran a disapproving, you think you cute. Were paid off by the after-school job she'd be juggling since she was 14. She never made her looks an issue. They did. Toya, however, was different. She made that clear only 2 months into freshman year, when Nichelle Griffin had stormed over to Mimi in the cafeteria and began to lay into her for coming on to her boyfriend, even though it had been Nichelle's wannabe teenager, Lothario, who had been coming on to a completely uninterested Mimi. Toya, who knew Mimi only casually, had calmly looked over the shoulder from the next table and said, "You just mad you wish you had that long hair. Go get yourself a weave and shut the hell up." Keisha's always spoiling for a fight of any kind, had jumped up to enter the fray, but Nichelle had slunk away before she could. Toya, Keisha, and Mimi had been friends ever since. Later that year, their group was formed. They named it Heart Song. They debated endlessly about the kinds of songs they should sing, what kind of group they wanted to be. Keisha and Toya were into hip-hop. Mimi's taste fell more on the soul side. She idolized those female artists whose songs stirred something inside her more than an urge to dance. Her mother had harbored dreams of her being a singer way back when, and when music was the only constant in their unstable lives. From Aretha to Alanis Morissette, Sarah Vaughan to Sarah McLachlan, Mimi would close her eyes and try to mimic their every inflection, pretending she was them, not a girl from Toledo who wouldn't recognize her own father if she passed him on the street. We got a new member. Shout out to C Millie 81 or C Mill 81. Thank you so much for joining the membership. We got about 1,000 people in here. Definitely hit that like button. Let's see. We got like 400 likes. Let's try to get to 800. Likes are just a way to let YouTube know that we're here. That was how she got through performing on stage. She became someone else, whosever song she was belting out. She was pretending to be Beyonce on the night they met Kenny at a local talent show. Heart Song had just won the top prize and $300 from their rousing rendition of Bills, 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 the Destiny Child hit. A lanky, dark-skinned man of 34 with droopy eyes and a seemingly permanent deposit of white crust in the corner of his mouth. Is that Kenny? Is that Diddy? Somebody said Total. Mimi, I don't know. Kamor is from the Midwest. And yes, we are less than 12,000 to 100K. So if you are new to the channel, please subscribe. Somebody told me that they were going to drop this in Lipstick Alley. Since the people in Lipstick Alley are looking for this book, I won't be mad at you. Go ahead and drop this video. Share it. We're starting a book club, people. Who would have ever thought? Let's see. Kenny Hill's name was only recognized from flyers posted all over town. A part-time club promoter. That would be Diddy. So I'm starting to think that she pulled from a lot of different people. A part-time club promoter, he told them he knew every musician, nightclub owner, and DJ in Toledo, which in retrospect, they realized wasn't saying all that much. He preferred a business card that read simply talent manager, and they didn't know to ask him for any credentials beyond the promises he made. He talked about getting them a record deal, and he didn't even ask them for money. And so it was Kenny Hill that became their manager. He had arranged for them to sing backup on demos at Wildside Studios in exchange for free studio time to record their own music. He kept telling them that he was setting up auditions with labels, but nothing ever panned out. And they'd graduated high school 2 years ago. The day after they tossed their caps, Mimi's part-time job at Discount Emporium Savmart became full-time. Toy was doing hair at Black Roots without a license, and Keisha wasn't doing much of anything except hanging out with her crazy-ass drug dealer boyfriend. They finished their demo, using tracks Kenny bought from a local producer and singing generic R&B lyrics that Kenny had written himself. Kenny Hill, club promoter, talent manager, songwriter, jack of all trades, and master to none. When he finally got a call back from Triple Large Entertainment a week ago, he didn't tell the girls right away that he had a chance at a recording contract. Instead, he'd gotten everything in order, wrangling 4 coach plane tickets to New York, 2 $99 per night rooms at the Chesterfield, before he strolled onto Wildside Studios and crowded triumphantly, "Pack your bags, girls. We're going to New York." Call the girl. Why did Lamont always have to be so dramatic? Daryl wanted to call the girl, but couldn't even remember the bitch's name. La something, Lavon, no, Latoya. Or maybe that was the other one. He'd already asked Lamont's assistant and the receptionist if they remembered the name of the pretty one, because he couldn't find the group's bio and attached photo. With all the groups that had come through the offices in the last few weeks, no one could remember a damn thing about any of them. Now, Daryl rummaged through all the useless office memos on his desk in search of the package the manager had left with him the other day. Daryl's office was tiny, so was he. But what he lacked in size, he more than made up for in self-aggrandizement. He was 5 foot and 3/4 of an inch. But whenever anyone dared to question his height, he'd pull out his driver's license. Bam, 5'7". People always took that as gospel, as if the DMV actually measured folks. So I'm thinking this little person has to be Russell. His office would have felt larger if he cleared out the half-dozen boxes of demos he was supposed to listen to as the A&R rep of Triple Large Entertainment. When he first got the gig, he didn't even know what A&R stood for. Artist and repertoire, he asked. He still didn't entirely understand, but he figured out he was expected to discover new artists and work on their development once they were signed. That he could do, although he really didn't want to be a producer solely and forget the office bullshit. He rarely got around to assessing the volumes of material that found their way onto the Midtown office. Most artists who got signed had already made names for themselves on the street or were affiliated with an established hip-hop clique. The next big thing rarely arrived unannounced via the United States Postal Service. Nevertheless, Paul Mekenwich, the label's VP and AR, stayed on Daryl's ass about listening to every single submission. A strapping, floppy-haired white guy in his mid-30s, Paul Mekenwich made six figures in his own hours. He was nicknamed Witchy. Sorry, I need a drink. There we go. Better. He was nicknamed Witchy because he had successfully cultivated so many R&B hip-hop acts as various record companies that people said he could work black magic. 23-year-old Daryl didn't have an official title. He was usually called the A&R guy, which he preferred being called to Witchy's assistant. Though affable to most, Witchy cracked the whip on his department subordinate. Mostly, Daryl believed as a form of insurance. If Witchy failed to meet his monthly beat-up on Daryl quota, Witchy was guaranteed to receive a few lashes from the HNIC himself. Lamont, Fat Man Jackson. Oh, head nigga in charge. Daryl idolized and despised Fat Man with equal fervor. Some days he wished he were standing tall in Lamont's $400 shoes, making big moves in bigger bank. Other days he hoped Lamont Jackson would keel over and die from a massive coronary and spend all eternity rotting in hell. A few months ago, Fat Man had put out the call that they'd be branching out into R&B. They were hoping to find the next Destiny's Child. In the past 2 months, they'd seen 27 groups. None of them got past their first song. After an audition 2 days ago of 3 white girls with varying degrees of pink hair who called themselves Shades, it was obvious Witchy was digging at the bottom of the barrel. Lamont had turned to Witchy and said, "Mr. Manowich, why do I feel like I'm a judge on American Idol?" Daryl had fallen back on Lamont's sofa and laughed. It was a joy to see Witchy catching some flack for a change. But the most hysterical part was that Lamont was beginning to resemble the fat guy on the show. Now, what is that man's name from American Idol? I can't remember his name. What's the one that used to always say dog? I know y'all know who I'm talking about. Was it last name Jackson? Dude from American Idol who always is saying, "Yeah, dog." He was always he was the third person on the stage. Randy is over there thinking now.
So now why am I in it? And you could have did it. See how I get wrong because you never apologized.
Exactly. Randy did nothing to nobody. And then this group Heart song, The Worst Effing Name, had come in yesterday. Daryl had only listened to their demo as a favor to Megan, Triple Large's certified hottie receptionist. She urged him to listen to it, saying the manager was a friend of her cousin. "Oh, well, I'll give it the VIP treatment right now," Daryl had clowned, like he cared. It was certain to be garbage, but if it brought him one step toward going It was certain to be garbage, but if it brought him one small step toward getting some pussy from Megan, it was worth a listen. And what did you know? It wasn't bad, not bad at all. Witchy was heated when he found out that Daryl had flown them without consulting him. One of the girls, the one with the long braids, had to be 20 pounds heavier than she'd been when the bio picture was taken. And the manager was annoying as hell. Daryl had to shove him out of Lamont's office as he tried to sell him on 2 other hip-hop acts he managed. The group's audition didn't seem to ignite much enthusiasm in Lamont, although he didn't say that he straight up hated them, which was his response to most of the 27 who'd come before. This morning, Lamont had called Daryl at the crack of dawn to say maybe they didn't need a group after all. Actually, his first words were, "Where the hell is Witchy?" Daryl rolled over, looked at the ungodly hour, and yawned, "At home sleeping, maybe." Lamont grunted his disapproval, then told Daryl he'd had a moment of revelation. He decided they needed just one girl, a solo artist. He wanted to meet with the lead singer of Heart Song, the pretty one, he said. Daryl finally found the bio picture sticking out of a stack of magazines on the floor. Mimi, that was her name. He looked at his fake Rolex. Damn, it was already 4:15 and Lamont wanted her down there by 5. He picked up the phone and dialed the hotel. This chick could have been his first discovery, and if a signing came out of this, he wouldn't let Witchy or Fat Man forget it. We got over 1,200 in the room. Let's see where we are. We got like 500 likes. Let's try to get to 1,000, y'all. And if you are new to the channel, definitely subscribe. We do a lot more than book clubs over here. The Straight Shooters, we do a lot. So yeah, join the family. Lamont climbed the winding staircase to his home gym thinking, sorry, we're in chapter 2, If I Ruled the World. That's one of my favorite songs by the Fugees. I know it's a remake, but it's still one of my favorite songs. Lamont climbed the winding staircase to his home gym thinking, Lamont Jackson, chairman of Augusta Music, had a nice ring to it. He'd be able to sell Triple Large to Augusta, but he'd still retain control of the label. He'd founded as well as run several others. How much would the deal rep? 60 million? No. Triple Large was worth 75 at least. He stepped onto the treadmill and poked a few buttons. He usually worked out in the evening after coming home from the office and before going out for dinner and whatever else the night offered. But today he'd come home right after his lunch meeting with Herb. One of the perks of being a top dog, you didn't have to account for your whereabouts to anyone. These workouts were often the only time he spent alone in the entire day. At the office, he had his minions swarming around him and his faithful assistant, Imani, hovering nearby. At night, out at the most exclusive clubs, his entourage was always surrounding him. When traveling in his Maybach or Suburban, money green, fully loaded, his driver Carlos was at the wheel. And when he finally fell asleep at in his Tribeca triplex, there was almost always a gorgeous babe in bed beside him. He had tried working out with a highly recommended personal trainer, but the guy had annoyed him and was fired after 2 sessions. Anyway, he'd gotten the information he needed and could continue to exercise his exercise regimen without some. So, guys, I'm sorry. You might hear me stumbling, but there's words that I'm taking out, and I'm reading this in real time. So it's a word that rhymes with maggot. Those are kind of things I can't say on YouTube. So I'm trying my best to correct in real time. Certain words YouTube does not like. The exercise regimen without some maggot, Richard Simmons wannabe, counting off repetitions and applauding him afterward like he'd just run the New York City Marathon. He had nothing against the little ass kissing as long as his ass was the one receiving the end. It was actually one of his favorite things, but he had gotten more than his fair share of that day, and he'd gotten an uncomfortable feeling that guy had wanted to kiss his ass for real. Besides, working out alone gave him a chance to decompress and think. The thought that was going through his mind right now was, I need a hit. A binding success story that would prove to Irv Green, to the heads of HMG, to the world that he deserved the top at Augusta. 9 years ago, he'd been one of hip-hop's corporate trailblazers, founding Triple Large Entertainment long before rappers were stirring in movies, shilling for Sprite, mingling with high society. His early track record as a label head had been unimpressive. The first few artists he'd released had come and gone without much fanfare and been summarily dropped from the label. Then 3 of his acts achieved gold record, and selling 500 albums had still meant big success then. How far the bar had risen in only a few years. Now a record that was merely gold certified, which meant lackluster sales. Lamont didn't allow the word failure to be uttered to anyone within his ranks. In a slumping industry where music downloading had become an escalating problem and major labels were regularly laying off hundreds of employees, posting profits was more difficult and more important than ever. Think about today. These people would have lost their mind if they had to be record executives today. Lamont's first big success was Floss, a raspy-voiced West Coast rapper who wove biblical sayings into his rhymes about his ghetto fabulous lifestyle. He became the label's resident sex symbol, despite the fact that he had a prosthetic leg. He lost his left leg below the shin after a car accident when he was 16 and claimed to have had a near-death experience and found God. Floss gave a whole new meaning to the term hip-hop. His debut, Prophetic and Floss, came close to selling 500,000 copies, although his bio said it was certified gold anyway. Ridiculous. Is that 50 Cent? 50's the only person I know who got 50 didn't have a missing leg, but he was, shot a lot. Kanye had a near-death experience. That's when his mouth had to get wired. Ridiculous, Triple Large hip-hop comedian, rapped about girls, parties, and mostly himself. Lamont had come up with this name following phonetic spellings are cooler. Tradition that the younger rappers seemed to favor. He thought Ridiculous was an improvement over the rapper's original moniker, Big Dick. Now I'm thinking Diddy. No, because Diddy's would have been Big Black Dick. Sassy Girl, thank you so much for the super sticker. Sassy Girl has been here since day one. Thank you for always supporting the channel. Oh, there was a mention of L.A. Reid having a prosthetic that I saw in the media years ago, but that doesn't fit either. I didn't hear about that. He could just imagine MTV having a heart attack over that. Dickie's first album, Haha, made some noise with 2 hit singles, but Lamont was disappointed with its performance. 2 million copies sold of the rapper's second effort, No Fooling, more than made up for any bad feelings. Excuse me. But it was a plasma-obsessed rapper named McGrimey who had taken Lamont and TLE to the next level. Grimey's first album, Bloodhound, went gold. His second, Hematoma, went platinum, selling 1 million copies in total. His third, Code Red, sold 2 million in the first 2 months, and his next, Crimson Tide, was the TLE all-time bestseller at 4 million copies to date. When Lamont learned that Grimey had taken an IQ test as a child and scored a staggeringly high 140, Lamont started calling Grimey Thug Genius. He was pleased when that nickname got picked up in the press. It appeared in a large type next to Grimey's head when the toned rapper was featured, shirtless and splattered with blood, on a controversial Rolling Stone cover. Controversial in large part because Grimey had shown up for the photo shoot tooting a cooler containing 4 hermetically sealed bags of human blood of unknown origin. Thereafter, Lamont's publicist let it be known that Lamont himself had coined the term. Grimey's success had really put the company on the map. The Triple Large imprimatur meant something now. When a new album was released from the Triple Large stable, hip-hop consumers, 80% of whom were suburban white kids, took notice. Floss's second album, Gimme the Loot, had gone double platinum. O Negative, Grimey's latest LP, had just reached 3 million, and from the looks of his first week's sales, Ridiculous Straight Clownin' was on track to do even better. The R&B and hip-hop infused movie soundtracks TLE produced had become a business unto themselves, and Lamont had formed a separate division around them, Triple Large Tracks. 10 soundtracks released in the last 5 years, and they'd all gone at least platinum. With his label dominating the industry, Lamont was firmly lodged in the top tier of the crop of new black moguls, but he didn't want to be one. He wanted to be the king, the one and only, and as the new chairman of Augusta Music, that's what he would be. By the time the girls' late afternoon snack arrived, Keisha's nerves had gotten the best of her, and she was in the bathroom vomiting up lunch. It was then that the phone finally rang. But it was the phone in their room, not in Kenny's, as they'd expected. While Toy attended to Keisha, Mimi walked through the adjoining door to answer it. It was probably her worrisome mother. She'd already phoned twice today. "Can I talk to Mimi?" said the caller. "This is." "Hey, it's Daryl from Triple Large. Kenny there?" "No," she said, excited to be hearing from him. "He went out." "Good. Look, meet me downtown at 5 o'clock. 86 Walker Street. Don't say shit to Kenny. Not a word." "I don't know if we can get there by 5. Keisha is kind of sick right now." "No, just you. Don't say anything to them yet either. Tell them that you have to meet a friend or something. I'll explain when you get there. 86 Walker. I'll meet you downstairs. Take a cab. I'll pay for it." "But what?" Mimi began. "Don't stress me," Daryl cut her off. "Just get down there by 5. You're already running late." Mimi hung up the phone and stared at it. What was going on? If she were to tell the God's honest truth, she hadn't expected them to call. At least, not to say they wanted them. The audition hadn't gone very well. They'd all been so nervous. Keisha's voice kept cracking, and that was the low point. But she was trying to remain optimistic, for herself as much as for the other girls. Yesterday, Lamont Jackson, the head of the label, hadn't said goodbye or thanks for coming or nice job. Nothing. He'd picked up his telephone before they were out the door and started dialing as if their performance had been an unwanted interruption in his daily business routine. The last to file out, she looked back at him. The phone to his ear, he caught her glance and finally cracked a small smile. Of encouragement or pity, she wasn't sure. Lamont had seemed to be channeling his thoughts to Daryl, who had done all the talking. Daryl had said they'd have an answer today. Yay or nay, he told Kenny. So which does this call mean? She wondered, yay or nay, and what was all this come alone business? When she walked back into Kenny's room, Keisha was lying on the bed with a wet rag on her face, moaning like she had given birth. "Are you okay?" Mimi said, kneeling beside her. "No," Keisha moaned. "Was that your mother again?" Toya asked. No, Mimi said hesitantly. "It was some guy, the son of my mom's friend. He lives here. He wants me to come meet him right now at this place around the corner." Too much detail. She was lying poorly, and for what? The address Daryl had given her wasn't the address of the office. Despite Daryl's fierce warning, she wished she could talk to Kenny first before she did anything. Where the heck was he? He left almost 2 hours ago, and why couldn't he pay his cell phone bill? "What place?" Toya questioned. Mimi said, trying to come up with a name, but she didn't know New York, so she just turned and walked back into their room, hoping Toya wouldn't ask again. Mimi, what if they call? Keisha whined. Not if, Toya corrected. They said they called today. Well, they might say they want us or they may say they don't, Keisha countered, getting her energy back. I'll call you guys in an hour, Mimi said, changing out of her sweats as Toya watched from the doorway. Mimi went to the closet and considered her clothing option. She couldn't wear the tight stretched jeans and crop peasant top that she'd worn yesterday for the audition. Toya and Keisha had worn the exact same outfit, so Daryl would surely remember it. Besides, that look was a tad hoochie for her personal taste. During their search for their perfect audition attire, Keisha and Toya had nixed her more conservative suggestions. You don't even know this guy, Toya complained. Forget him. I can't, Mimi held back. Mimi held up the black turtleneck with the bell sleeves that she had worn on the plane. I already told him I would come, so, she shrugged. Yes, it would be the turtleneck with army green cargo pants and leather boots with the platform heels instead of the slutty high heels Kenny had insisted they wear yesterday. Is he cute? Toya said. Who? The guy you're meeting. I don't know. I've never met him. She was already lying, so best to leave it at that. Mimi went into the bathroom and momentarily thought about telling Keisha and Toya the truth as she pulled back her wild mass of chestnut brown curls into a neat ponytail. She put up her favorite dangling and silver turquoise earrings, even though they stretched her lobes because she loved how they chimed with every step she took. She didn't have time for all the makeup Kenny had ordered them to pile on yesterday, just a little concealer to cover the rash of pimples that seemed to be multiplying on her forehead. No, she decided as she applied some cherry-flavored lip gloss, she wouldn't tell them. She'd do this alone, as Daryl had said, find out what was up and then report back. Kenny had to be the problem. Seeing him in that plush New York office, sporting his best nylon tracksuit, had made it glaringly obvious how small time he was. When he had tried to give Lamont a demo of a male hip-hop group he was representing, it was obvious that Lamont was not the least bit interested. Kenny kept saying, just listen to the first track. It's fire. Daryl had almost been forced to shove him out of Lamont's office. I'm the lead singer, Mimi told herself. I can handle this. Imagine if she could come back and tell them they had a deal. Okay, Toya finally relented. A little late as Mimi was already grabbing her knitted poncho and suede hobo bag and heading for the door. Maybe he's cute. And maybe we're going to get signed. And maybe we're going to move here. And maybe we'll be famous. And maybe he'll be your man. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Mimi said, shooting Toya a smile as she walked out the door. Chapter 3. Can't knock the hustle. For 10 minutes, Daryl had... Wait, where are we? Okay, so this is going to have to be the last chapter, y'all. Maybe because we read the forward. Yeah, this is going to be the last chapter. Can't knock the hustle. For 10 minutes, Daryl had been standing in front of the glass tower in Midtown that had housed the triple large offices with his arms outstretched as available cabs whizzed by. He'd rushed out with his coat, and it was too cold to be out here in just a sweatshirt. The cold was the one thing that he hated about moving up here from South Carolina. It took damn near till June for the weather to break. Cabs never stopped for him. He knew he should have given himself more time, and he would have, if Lamont's cornball assistant hadn't made him wait while she put together some package for him to take to Lamont. He needs to see it tonight, Daryl, she insisted. Then call the messenger service, girlfriend, because I got to go. So now he was going to be late, and Lamont wouldn't stand for that. He thought about throwing up the hood of his sweatshirt to cover his cornrows, but that might just make him seem more menacing. He was damned if he did, damned if he didn't. Story of his life. A cab slowed to a stop in front of the building, and Daryl saw the blonde woman passenger handing money to the driver. Daryl crowded the door and tried unsuccessfully to open it. He wasn't going to accept that off-duty shit that towel-headed cabbies always tried to pull. That's a little racist. He glanced up the street for a split second, thinking he saw a cute new TLA intern heading up the block, and when he turned back around, the cab was taking off, knocking him off balance and nearly running over his foot. The taxi stopped at the next corner to let the blonde woman out. She walked back toward the building, conspicuously avoiding Daryl's glare. To add injury to insult, Daryl looked down and noticed a smudge on one of his brand new white on white shoes. Oh, hell no. He bent down to inspect the damage to his Nike and decided not to mess with it and risk making it worse than it was. I have been there. He rose and saw that a white man hopped into the cab. This was the shit that Lamont needed to see. This is why he had to order cars on the company account. Lamont was always complaining about that, calling it blatant abuse of company policy. It's a necessity, yo, had been Daryl's response. When Lamont pointed out that no one else in the office ordered town cars to get around, Daryl decided to drop it. Most of Triple Large employees were female. Fat Man's own harem. They didn't have to deal with the bullshit. Cabs would stop for them. No problem. And the other guys in the office probably took the subway. Daryl wouldn't know. He didn't socialize with them. He only hung with other industry players on the rise. Though the price of admission to get into Lamont's inner circle was high, he was the only cat in the office who had a membership, other than Witchy, who'd waltzed right in just because he discovered a couple of successful groups and stayed there by being the ultimate yes man. To join this elite hip-hop fraternity, for over 2 years, Daryl had been a virtual indentured servant with a round-the-clock list of menial chores to do. It was not uncommon for Lamont to call Daryl at 3 a.m. to tell him his car needed washing. Damn. And he didn't mean wash it at your earliest convenience. It was understood that when Lamont told anyone to do anything, he meant now. Now that gives me Diddy for making the band. I want some cheesecake right now at 1 a.m. in the morning. And then by the time you come back from walking to get it, I don't want it anymore. I think she mixed in a lot of different things from a lot of these people. But Daryl had made it in, winning some respect along the way from being able to withstand the pressure. Most who thought they could hang disappeared once they found out how much work was required to be part of the crew. But the menial chores and public mockery that used to rain down on him constantly were only intermittent these days. Too bad the other guys who tried to infiltrate the TLE circle couldn't suck up because the end rewards were well worth it. Now Daryl was a producer of hits. Well, one so far. If Say What, the new ridiculous single, hit big, he'd see some serious cash. So why should I have to take the subway? Daryl wondered spitefully. And why should I have to pay out of pocket for using the corporate car service? He considered himself the oil in the Triple Large machine. The other employees were replaceable. He deserved preferential treatment. Even though he was sure he'd soon be making more money than he'd ever dreamed possible, he couldn't roll like he wanted to. Not yet. In preparation for his eventual jump in tax brackets, he had toured some pricey apartments with a real estate broker, telling the woman he was looking for something fly. That bony white bitch had hit. That bony white bitch had held tight to her purse and kept a pinched little smile on her face down the whole time. The doorman at the buildings they visited had looked at him as if he was in the wrong place. Or had they? Sometimes he felt like he was becoming paranoid. He had to cut down on the weed. He noticed that Lamont would be at a party stone cold sober while everyone around him was drunk or high. And Lamont would be having as much fun as the rest of them, if not more. Fat Man had told him he tried everything once. Daryl realized he had to keep his mind right if he was going to make it to the top. But he was so out of his element rolling with Lamont. Who could have talked shit with street niggas one minute and take a meeting in a boardroom on Madison Avenue the next? Lamont, who'd commit fouls that no one had the guts to call during his pickup b-ball games at his Hampton spread, then head into town for his favorite snack, bagels and lox. The regular pickup players were Lamont's big money networking pals. Some were white, some were black, and there was one Asian internet gazillionaire who looked like a college freshman and dressed like one too. They all had two things in common. None could ball, and they were all self-important dicks. They followed Lamont's cue and treated Daryl like gum stuff. She is funny. She is funny. They followed Lamont's cue and treated Daryl like gum stuck to the bottom of their sneakers, never inviting him to the post-game chow downs. For the longest time, he thought he was the bagels and lox, and he couldn't figure out what that meant. Then one weekend, he was sent twice upon to a bagel to pick up Lamont's lunch, and the secret of the lox was unlocked. Daryl wished he had Lamont's social dexterity, but having grown up in a trailer, drinking Kool-Aid out of peanut butter jars, it was a difficult quality to master. When Dickie, his childhood friend turned rap star, had brought him up to New York close to 3 years ago. It was like being called up from the minors. At the time, Daryl's most treasured possession had been a 14-karat gold Mickey Mouse pendant, and he'd worn his hair in sloppy braids that made him look like Celie from The Color Purple. He thought he was fly, but Dickie, who'd always had an innate sense of cool, disabused him of that notion. Dickie took him shopping for all the proper hip-hop gear, throwback jerseys, fitted baseball caps, jeans, and sweatsuits by Sean John, Academics, Rockaware, and the newest kicks. Now that he had worked his way into the triple large crew, things were looking up, but not far enough. Daryl threw up the hood of his Fat Farm sweatshirt and shoved his balled fist into his front pocket. Keeping Imani's package tucked firmly under one arm, he headed to the nearest subway station, cursing under his breath the whole way. Not Coolio. We got like 1,500 people in the chat. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. You won't see this anywhere else. We got like 1,500, but we got like 800 likes. Let's try to get to 1,000 likes at least before the end of the video. Mimi walked out of the hotel and a cab stopped for her right away. Hey, where are you going? She turned around to find Kenny standing by the hotel entrance, sucking a Newport in the chilly air. He just returned from having a lap dance at Stilettos in Times Square. To meet a friend, she stammered upon the taxi door. He squinted at her. What friend? Go upstairs, Mimi said without meeting his gaze. They'll tell you. I'll be back soon. She slammed the door and the driver asked her where she wanted to go. 86 Walker Street, she said, glancing toward the entrance of the hotel. Kenny stubbed out his cigarette and looked back at her. He held his hand up to his ear in a gesture that she instantly knew meant, did they call? As the driver pulled off, Mimi shook her head and averted her eyes, mouthing the word no. A bead of sweat rushed down Lamont's forehead. He wriggled his nose and picked up his pace on the treadmill, his eyes glued to the 3 flat screens hanging on the wall in front of him. The televisions were a recent installation. Lamont hated flipping back and forth between channels. He might miss something. The TVs were tuned, as always, to BET, MTV, and CNN. He tried to catch money line with Lou Dubs whenever he could. Lamont's personal motto was, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. The 3 screens were like his own customized stock ticker, flickering with cultural currency. He pounded the conveyor belt until his white Nike t-shirt was clinging to his damp, protruding belly. I can't say this enough. This author is great, or she was great. The way that, the alliteration, everything that she is a really good writer. I got to stop reading books like Portia's. This book, although it was tawdry, had nothing on this book. Like literally, it's night and day. And I did this book. It was super easy to do, actually. I swear Portia's book was a coloring book, and they just added some words. He cut off the treadmill, stepped down, and grabbed a bottle of Dasani from the refrigerator in the small upstairs bar. Guzzling the ice-cold water, he snatched a fluffy white towel from the basket next to the massage table and stepped out onto his terrace to cool off for a minute. Taking in the panoramic view, he savored a momentary feeling of satisfaction. This deck had more square footage than the entire apartment where he'd grown up in the Marcy Projects in Bed-Stuy. Now, I know Jay-Z grew up in Marcy Projects, right? He looked out and spotted the Brooklyn Watchtower. He hadn't been to the old neighborhood in a while, not since he convinced his father to move to an upscale retirement community in Florida. The warm weather was better for his father's chronic joint problems. Lamont Sr. called the records his son produced jump up music. Every time you see one of those videos, they're always hopping around like jumping beans. None of those kids stay still. A civil servant for 39 years, Lamont Sr. would often preach, a man can make good money, but all that money can't make him a good man. Simply saying, I'm proud of you, son, wasn't his father's way. Lamont's beloved mother picked up the slack with a pride in her eldest son that bordered on ideology. Now that Pops was living in Florida and Mom had her own luxurious condo uptown, there was no need for him to ever go back to the old hood. Manhattan was Lamont's hood now. He stepped back inside, wiped off his t-shirt, and tossed it in the laundry hamper, which could have been more accurately described as a trash can. His obsession with cleanliness, bordering on neurosis, meant he wore his gym clothes only one time. His housekeeper had orders to dispose of the clothing she found in the gym hamper. He laid down on the exercise mat and bent his legs at the knees. Time for crunches. He liked to do this as part of his workout shirt. He liked to do part of his workout shirtless so he could keep an eye on his midsection. He had always been a bear of a man, 6 feet of solid masculine bulk with his shoulders worthy of the NFL. Now, I know damn well that's not little. Why am I calling that man little? I know that's not little Russell Simmons. And Diddy, I never knew Diddy to have a pot belly. So is she mixing this in now with Jay-Z? But in the last year or two, his arms had gotten a little flabby and his midsection had expanded to unacceptable dimensions. He knew it wasn't solely due to an overindulgence of his wicked sweet tooth. He'd never had to work this hard to stay in shape in his 20s or even in his earlier 30s. He couldn't believe he was almost 40 years old. Playing basketball had always been workout enough to keep him in shape, but not anymore. He clasped his hands back behind his head and strained to raise his upper body. The first one was always the hardest. He felt like quitting after 50 reps, but he soldiered on to complete the full 300, hating every damn one. He had no choice. That old man gut had to go. I feel his pain. I feel his pain. It could have been Andre Harrell. I really do think that she's mixing stuff up with a lot of the different moguls. When the cab pulled up at the address Daryl had given her, Mimi looked in her bag for money. Daryl appeared out of nowhere and yanked the door open. "You late," he aggressively greeted her, handing her a $10 bill to the driver. He sounded out of breath. "Sorry," she said as Daryl hustled her past the doorman, through the lobby and into the elevator of what would look like an expensive hotel. "Lamont don't like folks to be late," he said, fingering one of his cornrows, which had come loose at the bottom. "So is that where we're going?" Mimi wondered. "To see Lamont?" Daryl rushed down the carpeted hallway like a hairy traveler, desperate to make a connecting flight. Mimi glimpsed at his blotchy, reddish-brown complexion and wondered if he had some kind of skin disease. He didn't say another word to her until they reached the last door in the hall. It was already ajar, so he didn't bother to knock. Before they crossed the threshold, he turned to Mimi and asked, "Ready?" That scared her. Ready for what? But she nodded, anxious to hear whatever Lamont Jackson had to say. We're stopping there because we're at an hour. We can't be doing more than an hour. So we'll be doing the next chapters probably tomorrow. I have not forgotten. We're still doing Hiding in Hip Hop. So I think today I will set up a new channel that's dedicated to like book clubs and other stuff because I don't think this can stay on my main channel. But we're going to be doing both of these. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember, there is a single mother of 4 who is going to be needing our help. So I'm going to already say commit to sponsoring Christmas. If there's anybody else who wants to do that, I'll be letting you know how we can. Annette Van Dyke, thank you so much for the super chat or super sticker, I should say. I'll let you guys know how we can help. Right now, I'm working on getting her some housing. That is my personal task. Other than that, I will let you guys know how you can help in terms of like supporting the kids for Christmas. There's 4 kids. I'll let you know the ages. I also need to know if it's okay that I say these things. So I'll reach out to her today, but she is a straight shooter. She shared her story when we talked about women who had been battered and abused and who had fled their abuser. She came up and she shared her story. So we're going to be talking. I'll be talking to her today. Veronica, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate you. Have a good day, y'all.